Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Friday live stream. I'm in a very interesting attire today. Ben said that I've taken the red pill and really jumped into it. But yeah, welcome to the show today, Premier Injuries live stream with your latest injury news. We're going to be talking teams, tactics, and everything else. I will need to put on my actual glasses in a moment because I can't read anything. But I'm going to throw over to you, Ben, to see how you're doing today. I think you're in a fantastic mood, generally because of what you're seeing on your screen.
It's fantastic to see you dressed for the occasion, Jason. Yeah.
I don't like to let you down, you see.
Yeah.
We do...
I've been looking forward to this live stream all week when you said that you would get dressed up for us. It wasn't the costume that I was hoping you would wear, but you know what? Maybe we'll save that for another day.
I mean, if people make requests for costumes, I'm all happy to wear them because you're the main star of the show. I'm just kind of the sidekick in this. But yeah, everybody, lots of people are liking this. Glasses, look at those shades. Jason, ready for party? I am indeed. It is Friday. As the song goes, it's Friday now. So yeah, let's get into it. But before we get into it, please do head over to the Premier Injuries website if you have specific injury questions. If we don't answer them during the live stream, as always, we are going to be going through this alphabetically. So just make sure to time your questions for that. Also, John Dre says I look like Declan Rice. I'll take that. Fellow Irish person, although I'm more loyal to Ireland than he is. And also, yes, please do subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it as well. I'll remind you a little bit through the video as well. But let's get into the team news. I'm going to put my glasses on as Ben talks to you about Bournemouth.
Yeah, we have heard from Antonio Areola. Not much expected in terms of changes from the Cherries treatment room. The closest or the nearest returner will be Lewis Cook. He has an outside chance of making the squad tomorrow, but realistically, we're probably looking at that Carabao Cup tie midweek for Lewis Cook. So not much change in terms of personnel. What he did go on to say was the two summer signings, both long-term absentees, the recent arrival of Tyler Adams, that was a surgery that he's had on his hamstring back in March for Leeds, had a bit of a setback in the summer. The expectation is that, you know, he's still quite a way off. However, he should return slightly ahead of time when compared to Alex Scott, who's probably a couple of months away, maybe after the international break in October.
People were saying in the chat that I forgot, because of all the focus on my glasses and my look, that I forgot to ask how you're doing today, Ben.
It's Friday. I'm always great, Jason. It's been another particularly mad hour. 12 press conferences. You'll see me head flitting from left to right. I'm waiting on two coming in as we speak. Unai Emery from Aston Villa. There may be a little bit of interest with regards to that because Emi Buendia went off in that European Conference or Europa Conference League game on Wednesday night, and also Sheffield United. Maybe not as much interest around that, but still, George Bulldog, I have had a few questions with regards to his availability.
Now we're going to turn our attention to the Gunners. There's kind of a lot of team news in terms of maybe those pushing back into the squad. Gabriel Jesus was seen on the training pitches this game week, but do you think he's anywhere near close to returning yet, Ben?
I mean, he hasn't spent a massive amount of time on the sidelines. Certainly nothing like that injury that he picked up in the World Cup that kept him beyond that 3-month period. So in terms of that, you know, physical sharpness and fitness, he's not going to have that, but he's still got pretty solid base level. And when questioned, Mikel Arteta said that the Brazilian was ready. He was a little bit coy on whether he meant, is he ready to start? You'll wait and see. But we have heard this from Mikel Arteta before. My own feeling is it's got to be Eddie Nketiah. I can't see any other starter ahead of that. And maybe minutes from the bench. Of course, those training shot footage, that's just a small snapshot in time. And a return to training, you know, it doesn't necessarily return to play. And of course, that doesn't mean anywhere near a return to performance.
So looking through the team as well, the back line, You've settled with Zinchenko there instead of Tomiyasu, obviously with the red card. And unfortunately, Arsenal haven't had any luck with kind of overturning it like McAllister. But also you've kept Saliba and White in there, even though Gabriel was subbed on, during that situation. Do you not think that maybe Gabriel might come in because of that situation with Zinchenko happening to fill in there?
I'm not really sure. In all honesty, we've seen Zinchenko back in the matchday squad last week. He's had another full week of training under his belt. Not ideal. He's not going to be 100% in terms of that physicality, but with Kieran Tierney off to Real Sociedad, I believe, on a season-long loan, then options are limited for Mikel Arteta. Of course, the Gabriel coming into that centre-back with White potentially moving out to the right-hand side is an option. But, what are the reasons? And I know what Mikel Arteta said are the reasons, and it was purely a bit of a tactical switch. But with Gabriel being linked with a potential move to the Saudi Pro League, has he had his head turned? Is there a move in the offing? We just don't quite know. So maybe if Arteta doesn't feel that the centre-back is focused 100%, maybe that's why he's out, and we may have to wait until after the international break and after the transfer deadline passes, if he's still at the club, to see him back in that starting 11.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm not kind of risking it now. I feel like Arsenal, there's too much rotation risk with a lot of these players. Ben White might come out one week because, Partey's now playing in that right back position and almost playing as an inverted fullback, kind of cutting in. So maybe Gabriel might play as a back three there. I don't know. It's really tough there. It's good in one sense that Arsenal have a deep enough squad to kind of do what Man City do, but also it's irritating for FPL. And this is why I always kind of say that probably Bukayo Saka is the only one that you can really trust starting week in, week out. But let's turn our attentions to Aston Villa. You said there's probably a few eyes on the team there, but it doesn't seem to be too much change at the moment. Obviously, as we always say, this is a working document. So do you want to talk us through maybe some of the breaking or latest updates from Unai Emery?
Yeah, so we haven't actually had any updates from Unai Emery as it currently stands. His press conference is due to go anytime now. So what we do know, there was one change midweek at Easter Road in that conference game against Hibs. It was a gamble that sort of paid off, certainly in terms of the result. That was a 5-0 win. But Emi Buendia did signal that he was suffering a little bit of discomfort, some pain, and that's why he came off at halftime. Had it not been 3-0 to the Villains, then, I suggest that Martinez... did I say Buendia there? No, I didn't. I'm losing the plot here. I'm trying to do two. I'm not good at multitasking. Yeah. So Emi Martinez signaled to come off on another day in the Premier League. If Villa hadn't been 3-0 up, then I dare say probably could have stayed on. Robin Olsen came in. It was more of a precautionary switch. So I'm expecting to hear Unai Emery tell us that he's fine. Elsewhere in the squad, we did see an appearance of Diego Carlos midweek, but this potentially we could revert back to the same lineup as last week. Of course, I know it was only against Everton, who had a pretty poor start, but it was a good result. And, I dare say that 4-0 scoreline slightly flattered the Toffees. So I don't see too many changes in personnel from that game at Villa Park.
So we've got a really good question here from Giandre. He says, Dinnery has been great so far. And obviously we've seen that in seasons gone by as well. But Giandre says, Ben, do you reckon when Moreno's back, Dinnery will drop out? Or is the spot now his to defend?
Talking to some Villa supporters, they were fairly adamant that Dinnery was on his way out of the club. And that's why I had question marks at the beginning of the season on who, took that left back spot. I looked at Torres, obviously, when Tyrone Mings was fit. And, does Moreno come back? And does that then allow Lucas Dinnery to move on? I mean, he's certainly not showing any kinds of downturn in performances. 3 assists there midweek, playing really good. But look, regardless, we'll work on the assumption that he is going to stay. Alex Moreno has been out for a lengthy spell on the sideline with that hamstring injury. It's going to take a while for him to come back. They're not the types of injuries that you want to take any chances or any risks with. So, it could be we're looking maybe into October time before even Moreno is anywhere near fully match fit and sharp. So, if you do own Digne, he's definite stick for me. And like I say, if he keeps on putting in the performances that we've seen so far, then, like I say, Moreno's got a bit of a job to try and take that shirt away from him.
We've got a bit of a debate now because I obviously forgot to mention Ødegaard in terms of the Arsenal assets. But what I do like about Saka is he's the 90-minute man. I wrote an article for FF Scout talking about how these players late in the game will do well. And Ødegaard quite often, Ben, you probably got a better kind of knowledge of the numbers there. But I think he only played 90 minutes in total because he always comes off kind of early in matches, which is quite important for my thinking as well. But also there is the debate over whether Ødegaard is on penalties now. Some people are saying that Arteta certainly didn't say that and it was an on-field decision. So let's continue with the analysis. Go on, Ben.
I will just interject there because we've just had an update from Aston Villa with regards to Emi Martinez. Now, the discomfort that I mentioned on Wednesday was related to his calf, and Emi Buendia has not trained with the squad today. So that calls into question his availability. Now, he hasn't been ruled out at this stage. It could just be more of the fact that Unai Emery is protecting his number one goalkeeper ahead of the weekend. Typically, what you would see is if a player fails to train ahead of a match, then they're out of contention. That would be the typical rule of thumb. Slightly different with goalkeepers in terms of, they're not forced or forced through the same exertions as an outfield player. So this is a difficult one. His availability hangs in the balance. And like I say, that decision won't come until way past that FPL deadline.
Interesting indeed. We've got a question here from GTX. Not sure how to say the next bit of his name. He says, do you think I should start Gabriel or Colwill? Obviously, we've kind of talked about Arsenal already, so I think that's fair enough because we will get to Chelsea in a second. But yeah, what is your kind of consideration there, Ben?
Or Colwill or Gabriel? Just in terms of starts, it's got to be Colwill. But then, you're questioning what type of performance can we expect from Chelsea. You would hope that they should be, get their first 3 points of the season this evening. As an individual, I think he's a great player, massive asset, huge loss to Brighton. Thought he had a fantastic year. It was really his breakout season. And I think he's got a big future ahead of him as long as he can manage to stay injury free. And I do expect Mauricio Pochettino to change the fortunes of Chelsea. It's just how quickly that'll happen.
Interesting indeed with the Chelsea situation, and obviously the kind of injury news there as well we'll discuss in a little bit because maybe repetitions of last season. But let's get on to another London side here with Brentford, and we do have a question on them as well. So with your lineup on the page here, Slavcho is already interested. He says, I have Lewis Potter in my fan team. How certain are you that he will start?
I'm not. Would be the long and the short answer with regards to that. We heard from Thomas Frank last week, due to he wanted to change formations. He wanted to bring in a player. It was really between what he said, a coin toss between Lewis Potter and Kevin Shard. He went with Shard, and that paid off dividends in terms of a team performance. That was an excellent result down at Craven Cottage. I just feel that Lewis Potter, like I say, maybe it was a little bit unfortunate, had a decent pre-season under his belt. It's very, very close between the two. I've opted for Lewis Potter, obviously, but, can I say that with any degree of real certainty? I can't, because it's such a close call.
We've got another question as well. Why do Brentford keep changing their formation so much, Ben?
Yeah, so typically, and this is just typically, and we see this with a lot of managers anyways, particularly in the Premier League. But what you will see with Thomas Frank against the so-called big six or the bigger teams, you will tend to see Thomas Frank go with a 3-5-2 in attack, which will then go to a back five when defending, and that's to try and sort of nullify the threat of the opposition. When they're playing other teams, he then maybe tends to change that up and go with a 4-3-3. So they're the two sort of template setups that we have seen from Thomas Frank over the last couple of years.
Yeah, you kind of see that reflected in the data as well. The 4-3-3 normally is the one that the team use the most, but it can be the variation 5-3-2, 3-5-2 as well. Like you say, in those kind of bigger games, Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City, Aston Villa and Chelsea and Newcastle as well were games that we saw that last season. So continuing with the rest of the Brentford team, any other updates that people need to be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people asking questions with regards to the return of Ben Mee. That won't happen this weekend, but the good news is he isn't too far away, and I'm presuming that a lot of managers will use next week's Carabao Cup fixtures as an opportunity to get those fringe players, those players returning from injuries involved, and get them some much needed minutes in their legs. So Ben Mee could feature midweek, and if he comes through that unscathed, then game week 4 in and around the squad is realistic.
So continuing with the Bees, we move from the Bees onto the Seagulls, Brighton. Lots of interest here because obviously we heard that Anisco is going to be out for a while with his injury, about 4 months, Ben. That's going to alter or maybe cement the position of João Pedro. I mean, what are you thinking with this situation, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, obviously very unfortunate for Francisco. We heard the news. It came over from Paraguay that there had been a training ground incident, left knee. Speculation whether it was ligament related or meniscus. What we do know is that it's an extended spell on the sideline. So yes, that's sort of in terms of an FPL, you know, that relieves some of the headache that we have in some of those attacking areas. João Pedro then becomes a lot more appealing. Concerns were after that opening, you know, result that they had, where they were fantastic. De Zerbi makes, you know, I think it was 3 changes still, and what he referenced the fact that he has so many players on and in and around the same level, then he's able to make decisions just basically on how he feels have trained, their mentality, their attitude, or just what he feels on the day. So he's not pressured and to stick with a starting 10 or a starting 11 every week. So there was a little bit of fluidity in that Brighton lineup, and Cisco removes one of those headaches for now. So like I say, from an FPL perspective, that's a little bit better for us, particularly those who were being drawn towards João Pedro following his goal on his competitive bow for the club.
Giandro says Lallana can play in that 10 position as well. Where is he? Is he in the thinking of the team?
Yeah, he had a heavily disrupted pre-season due to injury, and of course that hamstring problem also ended or curtailed his season, you know, in 22-23 early. So in terms of that sharpness and fitness, he probably isn't there ready to start, or certainly not play through the game. So I just don't see him being there and really pushing and being in serious contention when there are others better placed in terms of that match fitness.
Yaya Crew or Jaja Crew has said Welbeck injured.
No, he isn't. But what we do know is that Evan Ferguson is starting. So unless Roberto De Zerbi wants to tweak his formation this weekend, then it looks to be a like-for-like swap.
Interesting. Right, let's continue with the analysis here. And just a reminder once again, please do hit that subscribe button so that you're up to date. We do these every week so that everybody is as up to date as possible with the injury news. Like the video because that helps us out massively. And of course, share it as well. Get the news out there. That helps us grow the channel and we create even better content like the video that I dropped yesterday in terms of the analysis of Game Week 3 preview. We're able to put a bit more time and effort into the graphics and things like that because of the channel growing. It helps us to help you with your FPL teams. Now, Burnley are up next. One of the teams, yeah, Giandro's got it right on. Burnley moving on. Not one of the teams that we have too much interest in. Quick update there, Ben.
Yeah, I'm glad this is a quick one. Not really too much to update on at the moment. The Clarets have only played one game. They were scheduled to play Luton last week, game week 2, so didn't have a fixture. And we haven't heard from Vincent Kompany as it currently stands. So there's a little bit of a punt with regards to the Burnley lineup as a minute. So this could be one that does change as we near the deadline and any further news becomes available.
I think a lot of people are waiting for this one. Chelsea FC, lots of question marks. There's been more injuries this week with Mudryk confirmed out as well. Ben, talk us through the Blues, the latest injury news, and anything else that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, 9 injuries. 10 players unavailable if you want to factor in that Romeo Lavia, since he arrived from Southampton, is still playing catch up in terms of his fitness. The good news, Moses Caicedo, he's ready, he's available, and he can start. Now, initially, Mudryk maybe would have been the punt to come into that team potentially on that left-hand side following the injury to, I'm looking at his name because I'm trying not to mispronounce it, Chukwuemeka. He had surgery on Monday night. That was an MCL problem, not as severe as first thought. So in and around that 6 to maybe 7 weeks. So certainly after the next international break, but potentially before the October internationals. But because Mudryk, like you mentioned, suffered that minor setback in training, it looks like it's an easy one. Caicedo into midfield with Conor Gallagher playing a little bit higher up the pitch.
So we have so many questions about Chelsea. Broja was seen back on the training ground, wasn't he, this week, Ben? And a lot of people are already thinking, training ground, he's going to be back in the team. Now, obviously, that's, am I corrected? That was an ACL injury. So, obviously, returning to the training ground even is a step back. But probably we won't see him for a while as yet. And also, the thing that we always say is it takes a while to return from an ACL to get back to your playing level that you once were before. So, as we say, return to play does not always mean a return to form. So, question marks are there. Also, a lot of people are saying, will Lukaku threaten Nicholas Jackson's position as well? I think, in my opinion, but we're going to throw this to you because you're more of the expert on this, I don't think either of them are really going to pressure Jackson at the moment. He's the one that is going to be the starter.
Absolutely 100%. In terms of Broja, just recently returned onto the full training. He has been spotted on the training pitches prior to that. Certainly won't be risked unnecessarily. He'd be, gradually integrated within the squad. I dare say there will be a few behind closed doors friendlies, maybe involved with the under-23s first before even, realistically pushing for that first team. So there's just no need to take any chances with regards to that. So, I'm looking at maybe after the international break before we're seeing or hearing conversations around Broja being ready for that first team. With regards to Lukaku, my understanding that, he won't be coming back to the club. Certainly Mauricio Pochettino hasn't spoken to the striker. He's made it fairly clear on his feelings towards that. And I'm expecting a move away from the club before the transfer deadline passes, and with maybe Jose Mourinho being heavily linked with another striker, of course, because of a former Chelsea striker, Tammy Abraham, currently being sidelined with his own ACL injury.
So another one that a lot of people are asking about is Reece James. People are asking whether they should get Gusto in the team because is he going to be out for a while? What is the kind of time frame on that one, Ben?
Nothing definitive, and I don't suppose there ever really is with Reece James, given his problems. How many times we've touched upon this before? We're talking heading into the season, Reece James was a 1 in 2 player. That was based on 4 years worth of statistics in the Premier League. So 1 in every 2 matches. And of course, he's already had his first breakdown of the campaign. His summer was disrupted, knee, hamstring issues. He's now missed another chunk of football. We're now getting in the realms of when he returns of being in European football. It's going to be difficult for him to get up to speed. He may be risked unnecessarily, or sorry, maybe risk because of necessity. And when Pochettino may not have any other opportunities to do so, you're not being able to replicate that physicality and the exertions of the Premier League in training. He's a player at risk. In all honesty, I wouldn't be touching Reece James with a barge pole. There are better assets out there. And, why not take a little bit of a gamble on Gusto for now? He's a very cheap way into that Chelsea backline, or he's a little bit of an enabler if you want to go down that route. Like I say, any points from him would be a bonus.
Yeah, I think this is the reality. And, you and I wrote about it. We made videos on this in the pre-season that Reece James is just too much of a risk. You're rolling the dice every time he's going out there. And, this season, we want to see people lasting those 90 minutes, getting the bonus points as well late into the games. So, yeah, I agree with you there, Ben. Last kind of question, loads of people have asked, do you think Colwill keeps his place in the squad?
Without question. I think he's he's a standout defender, brilliant prospect, big future. If he keeps on performing the way he is, he'll be out of Chelsea and he'll be moving to a bigger club like Newcastle.
Just like Hall did this week, yeah. And Livramento, Livramento obviously came via Southampton, but another Chelsea youth asset. Crystal Palace up next. Some good underlying performances from them. They put in a really good shift against Arsenal and really scared me in terms of that. But what is the latest injury news and availability in the squad?
Again, not much change in the Palace treatment room. Will Hughes is probably the closest of those sidelines, potentially rejoining the first team in training from next week. Probably too early for game week 4 for him, but good news, and game week 5 after the break would be realistic.
Okay, so we'll move from the Eagles on to Everton, and just poor old Calvert-Lewin seems to have no luck at all. He comes back from injury. He's now got another facial injury, but in terms of that, it doesn't seem like he'll be out for too long with it, will he, Ben?
Well, that depends, in all honesty. Now, there's a lot of swelling in and around the cheekbone is where they took the blow with Emi Martinez. Now, there's a couple of considerations here that we need to consider. The extent of the damage, again, that's not fully known. Calvert-Lewin will meet with a specialist today to try and help determine that. And the reason they've had to wait for so long is because the swelling's so bad. So we understand that there is a fracture in there. It depends on the location of the fracture, the extent of the fracture, the type of the fracture, and that will determine the next steps. Now, if it's deemed that he doesn't need surgery and he can be treated what we call conservatively, he may just need to wait for a bespoke facial protection, a face mask to wear during the game. Maybe unlikely to return before the break, but pretty much soon after. If he has to go for surgery, obviously that may extend that timeline much longer. And, there have been examples with similar types of injury where, players are sidelined for maybe 2 to possibly 3 months. But again, we need to understand the extent and the type of fracture first and those next steps as recommended by the specialist.
Goodness me. And yes, somebody said, John Dre, in fact, said Mopai is the biggest FPL troll. I mean, already this season he's racked up loads of XG, can't seem to put anything away. I honestly don't understand why he's a top-level striker still. He's absolutely stealing a living at the moment. Fulham up next. What's the latest on the Cottagers, Ben?
Yeah, of course, we know that Alexander Mitrovic has now left the club, and Tim Ream, he's suspended for the game. That's why you had Calvin Bassey in and around that centre-back spot, partnering probably Issa Diop. A couple of positions potentially up for grabs. Initially, my thoughts were having Willian back in the team, but there are slight doubts, as they were ahead of the last game against Brighton over Brentford over his fitness, which is why Decova Reid keeps his place. I've also left Andreas Pereira in there. Wasn't great last time out, but still working his way back following the ankles surgery, and also Palhina dislocated his shoulder, had a little bit of a run out last week, suffered no reaction, and after that 3-0 result, I just think that Marco Silva needs to freshen his team, bring a little bit of solidarity, and that's why I got Palhina in there with look at the player missing out.
We've got Jandre saying he rates Vinicius over Jimenez. I mean, for me, I think I don't understand really the signing of Jimenez. I love the guy. I think, you know, he had some class times at Wolves, but he's not been the same player since his head injury. And it's understandable, you know, that was a really traumatic, awful event. It's a weird signing for Fulham, who are a relatively wealthy club. You know, they don't have to be signing the dregs of other teams to keep themselves up. So, I'm really kind of perplexed with that. And also, people do check out my video that I released yesterday, because Fulham have a lot of worrying defensive data to boot. Now, Liverpool are up next, and Stian has an excellent question for you, Ben. But first of all, we're going to go through the injury news and why you've selected this 11.
Yeah, Trent has been back on the training pitches since the beginning of the week. There were concerns when he took a knock against Bournemouth last time out. Those were played down pretty much, pretty quickly by Jurgen Klopp post-match. So that's why Trent remains in the side. Also, Alexi McAllister, if you've missed it, where have you been? His red card was overturned. And I haven't messed around with that front three too much either. Look, there is going to be a time where we do maybe see Darwin, really pushing into that team, or when we see Curtis Jones, who's, back in fitness, and maybe potentially put Gakpo up there. But for the moment, I'm leaving it like that. The only sort of real discussion point is the return of Joel Matip, and that's because of a muscle injury to Ibrahima Konate. He's not 100% out, but again, with the likes of Matip and maybe Gomez in the squad, there's no need for Jurgen Klopp to be taking any chances with those players, which is why I have Matip alongside Virgil van Dijk.
So Stian's question, which I thought was absolutely excellent, he says, for Ben, what is your take on Liverpool's defensive depth, mid and defenders, injury risk in their defensive strategy compared to their offensive focus and depth with their high press play? It's a really good kind of evaluation of the risks of the team and that play style as well.
Jesus, right, where to start with that one? Did not expect that. In terms of, did you say injury risk for the defensive assets? We're looking at a pretty robust set of players inherently. Robertson and Trent are always pretty much to go. Availability would be around that high sort of 90%. Maybe exceed that. Also, Van Dijk post ACL injury has been one of the mainstays of that backline. Konate, not so much. He's the one that I would look to probably avoid in terms of, if you're looking to maybe lock in a defender who you can rely on week in and week out. I touched upon it again during pre-season. Van Dijk with the armband would be my go-to there. In terms of those attacking assets, then moving high out the pitch, outside of Salah, he's the player that I see nailed down and locked in 100%. And then really it's a little bit of a free-for-all based on fitness and form. Like I say, I think Diaz certainly deserves to have a starting point on the way he's begun the season. Diego Jota, not so much, but, I think last time out, Liverpool were good enough that he should be starting this weekend. The concerns and the worries and the headaches will come around European competition and midweek fixtures, because they're going to have that flexibility, that depth within the squad, and Jurgen Klopp will rotate. He's quite happily do that. And, the expectation is we will see Liverpool with the 4s and the 5s and the 6 changes potentially from game week to game week in the Premier League.
So let's move to Luton very quickly there, Ben. Again, not a lot of interest in them.
Absolutely. Maybe one or two questions with regards to the possibility of Ross Barkley playing. Trained by himself throughout the summer following his release from French club was it Nice, I think, if I recall correctly. So he was playing a little bit of catch up, but they've had 2 weeks full training with the squad since game week 1, so he's potentially pushing for a start, but maybe not quite there yet.
Right, everybody get in your City questions quick, because we are going through the citizens now. Talk us through the team news, Ben.
Yeah, Nathan Ake, I think I mentioned it on the live stream last week that Nathan Ake was maybe a slight risk due to that recent hamstring problem and whether Pep would risk starting him for the 3rd time in a week. Of course, he didn't, and it was Manuel Akanji that got the nod in defence. I've swapped that over this time around. I do think Ake is going to be one of the mainstays of that backline, as much as we can say that with City. Of course, Aymeric Laporte is now gone to the Saudi Pro League. Gvardiol, he seems to have locked that place in at left back ahead of Rico Lewis. And elsewhere, the team pretty much picks itself. One maybe discussion point would be with regards to Jack Grealish and the possibility of him starting. But because Bernardo Silva's recovered from the illness, he's trained all week, I'm going to put him on the right-hand side with Foden on the left. But, it's a tough one. I own Alvarez, but maybe Grealish on the left and Foden, in that 10 role as well, could be a potential move. But I'm going to go with this one for now.
Right, so we got a fair few questions. Foden. Ben, do you bet your house on him starting?
I would never bet my house on any Manchester City player starting, apart from maybe Edison. I mean, listen, the performance against Newcastle was described by Pep Guardiola the best he's ever seen in his managerial career.
That's a good case to drop him then. That's the typical Pep.
So, yeah, make of that what you will. But, there's no doubting he's a world-class talent. He's an elite level player. But he continually seems to be managed. But then again, you can look at that City squad and, there's players on the sidelines who, would walk into most top teams in the world. I think we see less rotation around this City team again when they're just playing one match per week. The big headaches will come around European football and when Pep, wants to spice things and freshen things up.
Yeah, I think this is the problem again. Why I'm kind of reluctant. I love the City assets. There's so many high quality players in there, but the reality is FPL's about players just starting. That's the bare minimum you want from your assets. Manchester United injury news, Ben. Anything there that people need to be aware of?
Lots, really. A couple of injuries that we've been aware of this week. Firstly, at left back, Luke Shaw. That's a muscle problem. He's going to be out until after the break. Nothing definitive in terms of that timeline. Who comes at left back? Well, Malacia. He's also sidelined still for another few weeks. We have seen Martinez has started at left back on occasions, and he would be an option if maybe Erik ten Hag trusted maybe a Maguire or a Victor Lindelof. However, it looks as if maybe Diego Dalot would be the player to come in and deputise there, as he has done previously. In midfield, a hamstring injury rules Mason Mount out for around about 6 weeks, so possibly the end of September. That should open the door for Christian Eriksen. And I've went with Jadon Sancho over Garnacho just to freshen things up, to hopefully maybe bring some kind of attacking edge to the team who've looked pretty blunt, shall we say, over those first 2 matches.
We got a question here saying, are you sure Rashford is going to play in that 9 role?
I mean, who do we deploy out there? You could maybe put Rashford out on the left-hand side and put Sancho through the middle. I'm playing percentages here. That is a possibility. I'm only sure on the fact that Anthony Martial isn't 100% fit and probably not ready to start. Rasmus Højlund had his first training session with the first team today, so we're looking at game week 4 at best for him. So that would be, the two obvious players to lead that front line. The rest, like I say, it's just a bit of an opinion, and it's based on what we've seen so far and what we've seen last season.
Quick one here, Ben. When is Højlund ready?
In theory, could be pushing for a return to the matchday squad in game week 4. Like I say, trained fully today, but we don't know if there's going to be any kind of reaction to that recent lower back problem. But as it stands, if he comes through without any kind of issues and a response, then game week 4 is realistic.
Newcastle, your boys are playing, but is there any news that's going to derail them for their big game against Liverpool, or is it all kind of guns blazing for the squad?
Yeah, it's all pretty cushy here on Tyneside, and nothing major. There were slight concerns over the fitness of Joe Linton. Missed a couple of sessions earlier in the week, but he's back and he's trained without any problems. The main question is, and the big headache for Eddie Howe is whether he decides to bring in Harvey Barnes and or Callum Wilson. I've left the team the way it is, but those two players could be massively disappointed, given how they've played coming from the bench over those first 2 matches. Obviously, Barnes for Gordon is one, or maybe Gordon for Wilson would be another, with Isak going out wide. So I've got a bit of a headache over this one myself, and I've stuck with the same starting 11.
Also, one of the kind of maybe differentials of the week for me is Isak. I think he'll do well against Liverpool. The back line have looked really poor already this season. I think they've had the 3rd most big chances conceded this season. I think, a team of Newcastle's quality will really, really stretch a team that is still finding its feet, really. Nottingham Forest, another team that not a lot of interest in. Ben, anything notable there, or do you want to skip on to the next team?
The only notable sort of mention would be Brennan Johnson, and whether he's had his head turned. He is rumoured to be away during this transfer window. And with the game being at Old Trafford, I've dropped Johnson and I've put Ryan Yates into that midfield to bolster it and hopefully sort of nullify. I was going to say that Manchester United threat, but really,
yeah,
there's not much of a threat. But Johnson out purely based around, all of that surrounding noise about a potential move to Tottenham, amongst many teams being heavily linked.
Yeah, I think Nottingham Forest could cause an upset this week as well. I think you've discussed that this week as well. Man United don't look good at all. Sheffield United, another team really that not a lot of interest in. So Ben, just quickly on them, and then we shall get to Spurs.
Yeah, waiting to hear from Paul Higginbottom. So this is potentially one or two changes within this starting lineup. Like I said at the head of the show, George Baldock was a player that I was getting a lot of questions about. That was a slight calf issue, and he wasn't risked. It was more of a precautionary measure, knowing that if he was thrown in game week 2, then that might have put him on the sidelines for weeks.
Now, with Spurs... Sorry, I swallowed the wrong way. With Spurs, Maddison was a bit for doubt this week, but it seems like to be a turnabout face that he might be ready for this weekend, and so people shouldn't be getting him out of their teams. I mean, what is your advice here, Ben?
Trained fully and without restriction, Postecoglou referred to on Friday, and he said, in fact, he probably could have trained Thursday as well. Sky Sports cameras were down the training ground on Thursday in the absence of Maddison. Obviously set those tongues wagging, but he is fit, he is available, so I fully expect to start. Elsewhere within the team, maybe one potential change would be to bring in Pedro Porro over Emerson. So again, that's probably one to watch elsewhere. I don't see too many changes in that side following the win over Manchester United.
Now, as we're winding down, we're getting to the last few teams here. Please do hit that like button, hit the subscribe button as well. It really helps us out, and share the video to as many people as possible. But yeah, just have as much interaction with the video as possible. Let us know if you enjoy the content, if you'd like anything added, and also if you enjoyed my last video as well, which is a work in progress. We work with you, and if you'd add or take anything away. Hammers have looked all right this season thus far. I think James Ward-Prowse is an inspired signing. He'll probably go down as one of the best signings, I think, this season. What is the team news there?
Yeah, fantastic debut from Ward-Prowse, a couple of assists. That come as no big surprise. So that was a great result for West Ham United, considering as well they were down to 10 men. And it's that one enforced change of Nair Agard, who will go out the team. That looks to be a straight swap with Angelo Ogbonna. Everybody else, I'm hoping, more or less picks itself. David Moyes was speaking as we came on air. So again, barring any last-minute unknown injuries on the training ground, hopefully the starting 11 shouldn't look too far different from this.
And also, Paqueta's still in the squad. He's kind of like Ivan Toney this season in terms of won't he be found out for potential wrongdoing. But we wouldn't like to comment on that. Wolves, the team to end our session. Maybe they might be the team at the bottom of the league this season as well. We shall see. But yes, at the bottom here, Wolves, what's the latest, Ben?
Yeah, hugely disappointing result last week after what looked to be a promising start at Old Trafford, despite the leaving with, on the receiving end of a 1-0 defeat. So it remains to be seen what Gary O'Neill does in terms of his personnel, whether he chooses to persist or shake things up. What we do know is that Nuno is suspended, heavily linked again with a move to Manchester City, subject to £47 million bid that was knocked back from the club. But Matthias Nuno is suspended following his dismissal late on in last week's game.
So that is the end of today's live stream. Just one more plug for us. Please do hit that like button, do share the video and subscribe to the channel as well, because we're here every week. It's been so great to chat to you. Unfortunately, John Dre, Ben must shoot off. He's very busy with a lot of things. So we're going to, you can tweet Ben. If you have time a little bit later, Ben, you can answer that question for him.
Yeah. Catch me on the Athletic Live Q&A.
Exactly, that's where Ben's got to go off to. He's on the big boys stuff. But we're going to love you and leave you. We're going to see you very soon, everybody. We'll be back for the next live stream deadline, but also we'll be releasing videos through the week as always. Please do share some of your beliefs on my video and Ben's video as well if you want anything added, changed, whatever. But we will see you next week, and good luck with your teams and good health as well.